There is a kind of anger that does not come from irritation or frustration. It comes from ego death. It is called narcissistic rage, one of the most terrifying emotional reactions a human can witness. This is not ordinary fury. It is panic dressed as power. When a narcissist explodes, what you are seeing is not dominance but collapse, a desperate attempt to rebuild a broken illusion of superiority. Behind the shouting, behind the cold silence, there is a trembling fear of insignificance. Narcissistic rage is not about the moment, it is about survival, and survival can destroy everything around it. The world sees the storm. What it does not see is the earthquake beneath the surface. Narcissistic rage is not an outburst because someone got upset. It is a meltdown because their identity was threatened. The fury is not about the event, it is about the psychological wound the event exposed. Narcissists do not rage because they are angry in a normal human sense. They rage because they feel psychologically annihilated. The self-image they constructed cannot coexist with being wrong, being challenged, being ignored, being contradicted, or being seen as ordinary. The moment that illusion is pierced, even slightly, their nervous system translates that into humiliation or ego death. Rage becomes a defense mechanism to reassert superiority and erase the threat. To understand what triggers narcissistic rage, you must understand the emotional structure they live inside. A narcissist survives by maintaining a fantasy self. This fantasy is polished, admired, special, untouchable, more significant than others. It is not a confidence structure, it is a survival structure. Any moment that contradicts this fantasy, no matter how small, activates panic. Ordinary people experience embarrassment and recover. Narcissists experience shame and erupt. The first and most common trigger of narcissistic rage is perceived criticism. It does not matter whether the criticism is real, gentle, constructive, or imagined. To a healthy psyche, criticism is feedback. To a narcissistic psyche, criticism is psychological humiliation. It implies they are imperfect, and imperfection threatens the illusion of superiority they depend on. The ego interprets criticism as an attack, not a communication. The rage that follows is an attempt to rewrite reality so they do not feel small. The second major trigger is loss of control. Narcissists are deeply dependent on controlling how others see them, how others feel around them, and how the environment reflects their importance. When they cannot control perception, they lose psychological oxygen. Rage becomes a tool to intimidate others back into compliance. They do not argue to resolve. They argue to dominate. Their objective is not understanding but re-establishing power. The third trigger is exposure. When someone sees behind their facade, calls out their manipulation, or witnesses a weakness they work hard to hide, the narcissist feels emotionally naked. Exposure feels like annihilation. They cannot tolerate being seen as flawed, so they attack the one who saw the truth. The rage is a smokescreen. If they overwhelm you with aggression, the exposure is buried beneath chaos. Another powerful trigger is abandonment or emotional withdrawal. Narcissists experience abandonment not as sadness but as ego collapse. They need external validation to feel psychologically alive. The moment someone detaches, sets boundaries, or stops providing supply, the narcissist feels erased. Rage becomes an attempt to force reconnection through fear or guilt. They would rather be hated than emotionally irrelevant. Rage is their proof that they still control the emotional field. Humiliation, however small, is perhaps the most nuclear trigger of all. Narcissists live with buried shame that they cannot psychologically process. When something touches that shame, they react with disproportionate violence. They do not feel hurt, they feel threatened. To them, humiliation is intolerable because it exposes the small and fragile self hiding behind the grandiose mask. Rage becomes an emotional shield. What makes narcissistic rage so frightening is not the intensity alone but the emotional disconnection behind it. They are not arguing from hurt, they are erasing you to protect the illusion of themselves. The objective is psychological annihilation of the other person. They want to win through emotional destruction, not resolution. Ordinary anger seeks expression. Narcissistic rage seeks domination. The manifestation of this rage can appear in two primary forms: explosive rage and silent rage. Explosive rage is the dramatic, screaming, slamming, threatening, or verbally assaultive outburst people commonly associate with narcissism. It is the eruption phase. Silent rage is colder, controlled, and psychologically more lethal. It comes in the form of withdrawal, contempt, smearing, stonewalling, or emotional freezing. It is the punishment phase. One is fire, the other is ice. Both are warfare. Explosive rage is easiest to recognize. It is triggered when the narcissist feels instantly cornered or humiliated. They lash out to overpower the moment. They may insult, degrade, mock, or attack your sanity. They may twist reality so violently that you begin to doubt yourself. The rage is chaotic because the narcissist is emotionally flooding. Their inner world is in collapse, and they are fighting to restore power as quickly as possible. Silent rage is more calculated. It appears when a narcissist wants to re-establish superiority through emotional starvation instead of explosive intimidation. They punish you by withholding presence, validation, or acknowledgement. They erase you psychologically. They freeze you out until you chase reconnection. In their mind, this restores hierarchy. They become the one being sought after, while you become the one needing them. It repairs their ego by reversing the emotional power dynamic. Another manifestation of narcissistic rage is character assassination. When a narcissist cannot control you directly, they control how others perceive you. They smear your name, rewrite history, and recast themselves as the victim. This is ego repair unfair through narrative. They destroy your credibility so their illusion remains untarnished. The rage lives through reputation warfare. Gaslighting is another rage expression masquerading as logic. Instead of screaming, they destabilize your sense of reality. The rage is hidden beneath manipulation. They erase your perspective, feelings, or memory so they can re-establish psychological dominance. This is not misunderstanding. It is erasure as control. Some narcissists weaponize humiliation. They belittle you, mock you, or exaggerate your flaws. They put you down not because they believe you are inferior, but because they need you to feel inferior. Only then do they feel superior. Rage is the engine behind the performance, even when the tone is calm and the delivery is icy. What makes narcissistic rage uniquely destructive is that it is not about the present moment. It is about protecting the fantasy self from collapse. The target is not the behavior that upset them. The target is the person who threatened the illusion. Once the ego feels endangered, empathy shuts down completely. In that moment, the narcissist sees the other person not as a human being, but as a psychological threat that must be eliminated or subdued. The emotional system of a narcissist is wired for survival, not connection. Rage is how the narcissistic psyche repairs ego injuries in real time. Ordinary anger is reactive. Narcissistic rage is protective. It is identity maintenance. This is why reasoning with a narcissist in rage is impossible. You are speaking to the false self, not the real one. The rage is not negotiable because the ego threat cannot be negotiated. You cannot soothe them because the wound you are witnessing is not surface level. It is structural. They would rather destroy the relationship than experience vulnerability. They would rather burn the bridge than stand on equal ground. Understanding these mechanics allows you to stop personalizing the attack. Their rage is not about the truth of who you are. It is about the terror of who they are without superiority. Narcissistic rage is the smoke from an internal fire, the fire of shame, fragility, emotional emptiness, and fear of insignificance. It is the psychological siren that screams whenever the illusion cracks. It is not power, it is panic. The most painful reality is that the narcissist is raging against their own inner weakness, but they direct the destruction outward. They rage at you so they do not have to face themselves. They break others so their own fracture remains hidden. When you understand this, something inside you shifts. You stop thinking, "Why are they so angry?" and begin to understand, they are terrified of being small. You stop interpreting their fury as power and begin to see it as fragility in disguise. When you finally understand narcissistic rage, you stop taking it personally. You realize it is not about your words, your actions, or your worth. It is about their terror of being ordinary. Their anger is not strength. It is weakness fighting to stay hidden. You cannot reason with it, and you cannot fix it, because it is built to protect an illusion, not truth. The only true power lies in walking away with clarity, not confusion. If this breakdown opened your eyes to the psychology behind narcissistic rage, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Psychanatomy for more deep psychological insights.